Um, Christina Whitehouse is being seated now. She's head of Bike Advocacy Safety Group, Bike Lane Uprising in Chicago. Richard F. Burke Jr., partner at Clifford Law Offices in the center. Bradley M. Cosgrove, partner at Clifford Law Offices, attorneys for the Shambrooks. And I will turn it over now to Rich Burke to open up the press conference. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. As I believe Pam indicated today, we have filed a lawsuit against a number of entities that we believe contributed to the very tragic death of 3-year-old Lily Shambrook. And amongst those entities we have named in the complaint are Commonwealth Edison and Mondelez Trucking Company and Penske, which happened to be the owner of the vehicle Mondelez was operating, and also the city of Chicago. And we're not intending today to go into all the very specific details of the actual incident. However, we wanted just to give you a little overview of the bases for our complaint and kind of the circumstances that existed at that day that rendered this intersection very dangerous and contributed to causing Lily's death. The Commonwealth Edison company was operating a large utility truck, had a trailer attached to it. It pulled up to the intersection of Leland Avenue and Winthrop Avenue in the Uptown neighborhood. Leland, by the way, is what's known as a greenway, and it had a designated bike lane marked on the street, marked with a sign along the side of the curb area. And Commonwealth Edison pulled up literally to a stop sign that was also located at this intersection in an area obviously illegal because of its proximity to the stop sign. They literally, as you may see, at least from the animation we have prepared, were blocking part of the pedestrian crosswalk in front of the truck. And very importantly for this case, the ComEd truck was obstructing the bike lane. And Kate Snow, Lily's mom, were riding their bike eastbound on Leland on this nice summer morning. And Lily was on a carrier seat on the back of Kate's bike. Kate's husband and the father of Lily, Tim Shambrook, was following behind them on his own bike. They were riding in the bike lane, and as they approach Winthrop, they encounter an obstruction by the Commonwealth Edison truck protruding into the bike lane. That forced Kate to have to veer into the traffic, and at the same time, there was a large semi-tractor trailer truck that was also traveling eastbound on Leland. And we have brought claims against Mondelez. They were the operators of this truck, as well as Penske, who we believe were the owners. And I think there's a number of reasons that Mondelez also has liability. The first of which is this truck realistically just was unsafe to be on this street on a greenway in a substantially residential neighborhood. It's only one way each way, east and west. And this is a very large semi-tractor trailer truck. And we believe that the driver was not keeping a proper lookout for bicyclists when this is a known and marked bike lane. he would have had to have passed Lily and Kate and Tim just a short distance before they got up to where he had then stopped at a stop sign. And we also believe that he continued even after there was contact between the bike, Kate's bike, and the Mondelez truck and the ComEd truck, that this Mondelez truck kept going through the intersection. And literally Tim's Shambrook himself, as well as some other bystanders, had to start chasing the truck and screaming for him to stop. Lastly, we have also named the city of Chicago, and we think that they substantially contributed to this very tragic death as well, for a number of reasons. The city had actually, we have determined so far, granted Commonwealth Edison a permit to stage some equipment, construction related equipment, on Winthrop Street, which was the north-south street. However, we believe there really were inadequate safeguards to determine, you know, how much equipment, what size of equipment, is there realistically areas for this equipment to be parked? And we don't believe they should issue these permits for what they know is going to be large utility trucks without having some safeguards. And most importantly, they shouldn't be doing it when they know this, they're granting a permit for addresses on Winthrop that went all the way up to the intersection with Leland, which is exactly where the designated bike path passed through. So essentially they were telling ComEd, you can bring in a lot of equipment, heavy duty equipment, and park it all the way up to the corner and stage it all the way up to the corner where a bike path is passing through. And that just creates a dangerous situation because it encourages and literally results in Commonwealth Edison bringing in exactly the type of equipment they brought in, and there's nowhere for them to put it. And they usurped the safety of this bike lane and had their vehicle in this bike lane obstructing the bike lane, and instead of being where it should be. And additionally, the city, we also believe, has responsibility because they simply should not have been allowing semi-tractor trailer trucks to be passing through this area of Leland, which is a designated bike lane, designated greenway. It's passing through a residential neighborhood on a relatively narrow street with one lane eastbound, one lane westbound. There are two large commercial multi-lane streets, just a block north, a block south, Wilson and Lawrence Avenue. And those are the streets that the city should have been requiring the large tractor trailer trucks to be using. And there was substantial construction going on different projects just down the street on Winthrop, at the L platform over on Lawrence. And I believe, and we certainly think, it resulted in excessive traffic on Leland by these large trucks because the trucks wanted to avoid being on the Wilson or Lawrence and where construction is going on, where maybe it's slower And there's even an issue as to the size of the overpass. There's a bridge or L platform overpass, and the heights vary. And the truckers were taking advantage of this by a somewhat higher bridge height on Leland and using this street as a thoroughfare when a greenway, and Christina will comment on this as well, that is specifically designed for the pleasure of our citizens to be safe and using the greenway and the designated bike lane for enjoyment and to enjoy all the green spaces in our city. So those are an overview of the allegations we have brought. What we call discovery, meaning further investigation of details. It will start now, and more details will be determined as we evaluate all the testimony and evidence that results during the course of discovery. And so in addition to that, we also had a little animation created, and we just again, it is not intended to be a reenactment of this incident by any means whatsoever, but we wanted to be able to give you a better idea of an overview of the incident and the location and the circumstances that converged here and all contributed to Lily's death. And so, Mitch, if you could pull that up, and my partner Brad Cosgrove will comment on some of what we've depicted here.
As you guys could see, the Leland Avenue street travels east and west, and on the south side of the road, there is a designated bike lane, which is known as a greenway, that is meant for bicyclists to ride in, and there's parking to the right of that. And as the roadway approaches, there was a Commonwealth Edison truck illegally parked for two reasons. First, it was parked too close to a stop sign. Second, it was parked within a designated bike lane, obstructing anyone on the bike lane from being able to pass by, such that anyone who went by had to unfortunately go out into the street, because for anyone over the age of 12 operating a bicycle, it's illegal for them to ride their bike on the sidewalk. So it would be illegal for them to go any other way other than being forced to enter into the street. The Commonwealth Edison obstruction led to create a situation where there was no other place for the bicyclists to go on the day other than out into the lane of travel, which is what is part of the reason why Commonwealth Edison was named in this case. There was a permit that was issued by the city of Chicago, as Mr. Burke indicated earlier. And the permit permitted parking on the roadway to the right in the animation, and there was not permitted to have parking on the stretch of Leland where the Commonwealth Edison truck was stationed. At the time, we have an obstructed bike lane that did not allow for the use of the bike lane in its intended purpose. In the city of Chicago, we have found in the recent years, fatalities, deaths of people on bicycles has increased 2 times as much as in the years prior, according to some reputable sources. And of those deaths, we've learned that about 40% of those deaths involve minors. So we filed a lawsuit in this case to try to find justice for Lily and to make sure that we have all of the responsible entities named in the lawsuit, to have all the facts brought together to understand why it is this bike lane was obstructed, why it is that the city allowed this to happen, and why it is that after the point of contact, the semi truck didn't stop and continued to go forward for what appears to be more than 30 feet. Why it is that this crash took place on a greenway that should never have happened. We think that through the use of this lawsuit, we're going to have a few goals accomplished. First, we're going to get justice for Lily and her family. But second, we're also going to be able to increase awareness for the biking community in Chicago to make sure that there's safety and to make sure that obstructions do not take place, because as you're going to hear in a moment, this issue of obstruction, and specifically obstruction with other Commonwealth Edison vehicles, has happened a number of times in the past. At this point, I think we're going to turn over our discussion to
Christina Whitehouse is with us. She is from Bike Lane Uprising. Christina is the founder, and her organization are strong advocates for bike safety, and she is very knowledgeable about the hazards that exist in our city for bicyclists. And with that, Christina, why don't you go ahead and make a few comments.
In 2017, I founded Bike Lane Uprising. As many of you know, Bike Lane Uprising is a civic tech platform. It's used for allowing cyclists the ability to document bike lane obstructions and add them to our database so that we can then track them and hold violators accountable. And the goal is that we can prevent bike lane obstructions like this and deaths like this in the future. As mentioned a moment ago, it is illegal to bike on the sidewalk if you are 12 years old or older. While there's around 4,500 miles of streets in Chicago, there's 35 miles of what the city states are protected bike lanes. And when the city defines a bike lane as protected, it means that there's some sort of delineation. Oftentimes those are flexible posts. Those flexible posts have long been torn down in many of those locations. So while we state that there's 35 miles of bike lanes, it's actually probably quite less than that. Greenways are even more rare. And the city actually defines greenways. The Department of Transportation defines greenways, specifically the Leland Greenway, as a low-stress residential street, which provides a safe and comfortable connection for people biking and walking. Neighborhood greenways often feature traffic calming elements to slow traffic. One of the alderman websites in the area states neighborhood greenways turn roads into places for people. They're residential streets with low speeds and low traffic volumes where people walking and biking are given priority. There's less than 1% of greenways in Chicago. People go out of their ways to seek safe routes to travel on. As mentioned, in 2017, when I started this, there were about 5 or 6 people being killed a year, and that number seemed unbearable. Cyclist deaths are now double what they used to be. And instead of it getting safer for the biking community, we're actually seeing it get more and more dangerous. I cannot begin to explain how demoralizing it is to buy materials to make ghost bikes in bulk to keep up with it. 3-year-old Lily was killed while biking with her parents in a bike lane on a neighborhood greenway when her family was pushed out into faster moving traffic. That traffic is not expecting them, and they were pushed out into traffic when the bike lane was blocked. Our database has documented over 33,000 bike lane obstructions. ComEd has been submitted to our database over 50 times over the years. Lily's death was not an accident. The factors that led to Lily's death were known problems, and they were preventable. As many of you know, bike lanes around the city are used for illegal parking. They're used as unmonitored construction sites. There are free distribution centers for companies, and there are extra travel lanes for motorists. On multiple occasions, Bike Lane Uprising has reached out to ComEd about their employees parking illegally in bike lanes. And we've also reached out to the city of Chicago about this specific company. We've asked for permit checks. In April 2019, Bike Lane Uprising tweeted to ComEd and the city, informing them about the illegal blocking of the bike lanes, urging both of them to prevent ghost bikes, and asking for a permit check. ComEd responded to that tweet, stating that they would address the issue. We then informed them that their drivers had been submitted to our database over 20 times, and we urged them to train their drivers on the issue. They've now been submitted over 50 times to our database. Even after Lily's death, in the very same month, they blocked the bike lane again. And like other construction work around the city, they're still continuing to be unmonitored. They're still getting permits to do this work. Semi trucks are still driving down Leland Greenway, and drivers are continuing to park illegally in the bike lane, specifically in the same exact spot that Lily was killed. We know these tragedies will repeat again and again as long as city officials continue to ignore the biking community's calls for safer streets and protected bike lanes. The bicycling community is putting city leaders and businesses on notice. We care deeply about the safety in our communities, and we will report every bike lane obstruction in the effort to protect our neighbors. We will take every step necessary to hold accountable irresponsible drivers, specifically those that block bike lanes for a moment's convenience. In the city of Chicago, if the city of Chicago will not act to document and resolve bike lane obstructions, Chicagoans around the city will. Please report bike lane obstructions to our Bike Lane Uprising database, specifically the parties involved in this case.
I just want to mention that the animation that was shown is available on our Clifford Law website, cliffordlaw.com. And Mitch, if you could put up for a moment the statement of the family, the Shambrook family. That also, this statement is available at cliffordlaw.com. You can find it there.
Recording in progress.
I have copies of that statement. Does everybody have a copy, or do you need a copy? Okay. All right, and then we'll entertain questions of Rich.
No, I was just gonna add that, as that statement indicates, and as, you'll see when you have a chance to read through it, the, Shambrooks are very avid bicyclists, and, as Christina mentioned, there are just innumerable hazards that exist throughout our city that affect bicycle travel for bicyclists in designated bike lanes where they're entitled to be. And that's why the Shambrook family has asked Bob Clifford, the head of our firm, and Clifford Law Offices to further investigate this matter and to prosecute this litigation on their behalf, because they want to be certain that there are improvements throughout the city and that their daughter's life does not go in vain without there being changes made to accomplish future safety for bicyclists throughout the city.
Rich,
Yes, sir.
Advocacy from NBC5 News. Can you clarify for us exactly where Kate and Lily were hit?
You know, that's
Like how that accident.
I know that's certainly something that's running through all of your minds, and that's exactly what we're referring to earlier when we said it's premature to get into those type of details. It happened, right, just short of the literal intersection of, Leland and Winthrop Avenue. And there's, I think many details that will get clarified further as we continue with this, with discovery and depositions throughout the litigation.
But I mean, the semi truck was driving in the same direction that they were biking.
Yes, that is correct.
So were they hit from behind?
They were, the semi was traveling eastbound, the ComEd truck was facing eastbound. The Shambrooks were riding their bike eastbound, and there was at some point contact between Kate's bike and both the Mondelez tractor trailer truck and the ComEd truck that was illegally parked.
So you're working to figure out exactly how she was, I mean, was she rear end, was she side to bike, was she not off her bike, was the little girl over? I mean, can you provide any sort of clarification?
Sure, the precise mechanics of it, I think, are still under investigation, and there'll be experts involved as well. But I can say that, yes, I think it's common knowledge that Lily sadly was run over by the rear wheels of the tractor trailer truck.
Okay, and a follow-up question to that then. I know that the whole purpose of this is to make sure that Lily's death is not in vain. What advice, and I think you can speak to this as well, what advice would you have for bicyclists when they see that there's obstruction in the bike lane as they're riding a bike in that greenway?
In the city of Chicago, it's illegal to bike on the sidewalk. So legally, they're forced into the travel lane with other vehicles. And unfortunately, this is a danger that cyclists in the city of Chicago have been citing for decades, if not longer. I think the real question needs to be flipped to those driving and those illegally blocking bike lanes.
That's a great point. But as far as like protecting your own person and that kind of thing, I just kind of wanted you to speak to that. What advice would you have for bicyclists? And then we can talk about drivers as well.
Legally, I would have also entered into the travel lane. Unfortunately, there's no perfect situation to do that. There is no safe situation to do that. But that's what we've been faced with. And there's less than 10% of the streets have any markings for bike lanes at all, even share roads. There really is no protection for cyclists. That's the issue here. And even the bike lanes that we have, cyclists are being, threatened and, you're being buzzed by. I mean, there are no other alternatives.
And then advice for drivers. So you're advising bicyclists to legally enter into the roadway out. If there's an obstruction, then what advice would you have for drivers?
Drivers need to be aware of their surroundings. Drivers need to be conscious of the streets that they're even on. Why was a semi truck on a greenway?
Alex Block with Chicago. So selection, a rider on the corner. The statement talks about policy changes that happened after Lily's death last year at City Council. For other people that are concerned about this, because this, again, your goal is to raise awareness and hold people accountable. But what kind of potential policy ideas, what kind of potential measures, kind of in the vein of what was introduced last year, could further be introduced, or like, is there anything you guys have decided to workshop or think about for all the candidates that are running? It's like, what policies or what types of potential ordinances can be either adapted from other cities here, or what's flawed, what can be adjusted or what can be changed to kind of avoid a situation where a driver does kill a cyclist?
Is that a question for me?
No problem.
I'll comment briefly on that, or at least initially. I think number one, there really should be better demarcation of bike lanes, concrete barriers, at a minimum, bollards and stanchions that prevent trucks like this ComEd truck, from, getting into a bike lane and encroaching on, that bike lane, that designated bike lane. Secondly, and as you know, there was, an ordinance passed, just probably in the last month, for circumstances where a bike lane is going to have to be closed for some reason. There has to be more, if they're going to require the city, or the contractor rather, to post signage and advising that bike lane is closed, that there's construction traffic going on. But and that's a good step in the right direction, but at the same time, there has to be some enforcement of that. There has to be monitoring of that. And that's one realistic problem, and that that laws on books just can't accomplish without there actually being enforcement and monitoring and in conjunction with that, a little bit of what I alluded to earlier with respect to permits that are being given to not just ComEd, but other contractors that are encouraging and allowing large equipment vehicles to come into an area in the immediate vicinity of a bike lane and on a greenway street. So those are certainly some of the things that have to be considered in the future and implemented in the future. And I'm sure as we continue with this litigation, others will become evident. And Christine, if there's anything else you want to add to that, go right ahead. But you may have covered it already in your earlier comments.
It's always been illegal to block bike lanes. And a lot of the deaths that involve the biking community involve construction sites. It's a known problem area. And if you go around the city of Chicago right now, when you leave here, and if you see a construction site, more than likely, you can probably find something that they're done to encroach bike lanes, public ways. I mean, just the other day I was in the West Loop and there's a construction site. They have no flaggers, they're blocking the bike lane. The permits that they have are multiple years expired and nobody's checking on them.
I do have a question about the pyramid. You said that ComEd had a pyramid that wanted to park. Can you clarify, and there's a follow-up question, but can you clarify where they were supposed to park, if it was on Leland on the other side of Leland, or if they were supposed to be parked on the other?
No, they were supposed to be parked on Winthrop. There was work being done on Winthrop. They were not supposed to park on Leland at all.
At all.
Not at all. And if you think about it, think about the reason why the city's issuing a permit for a park to be on parking pass to be on Winthrop, not Leland. Leland is a bike lane. Winthrop is not. So it makes sense that you'd give somebody a parking pass to park on Winthrop. It does not make any sense for someone with a huge truck to park it on Leland, especially makes even less sense to park in a bike lane.
So my follow-up question is, considering that they were parked in the bike lane and not parked where they were permitted to be parked, were they cited?
Well, it's a good question, and I'm gonna come back to it in a second, but I want to follow up to something that Christine said earlier. Did you notice that she said that her organization in the duration of her time has received more than 50 complaints by Commonwealth Edison about Commonwealth Edison vehicles parking and illegally obstructing bike lanes? That's 50 times people actually reported it. Can you imagine how many times it actually happens and it's not reported? The real question that this lawsuit is going to help find out is when Commonwealth Edison tweeted out to the community for all of us to read that they were going to take care of it and they were going to do something about it. We're going to be able to find out what they really did and what bulletins they really provided to their drivers to make sure that this didn't happen, because they had plenty of notice that this is a problem, plenty of time to remedy the issue and to make sure their drivers didn't park illegally, to make sure they didn't obstruct biking lanes. And this lawsuit will give us access and discovery from ComEd to see if they actually followed through on the tweet that they gave to our community that they were going to do something about it, because the actions that happened on the day of our incident prove that they didn't do anything. that they didn't take steps to make sure that the driver of the truck that was involved in our incident didn't obstruct a driving lane, a bike lane, even when they had a permit to park on the adjacent street.
But did they get cited?
ComEd did, yes, they got tickets for parking, for obstructing a bike lane and for parking within 30 feet of the stop sign, yes.
So who issues those tickets? The city?
City of Chicago did, yes.
So Chicago Police Department.
Chicago Police Department. Yeah.
So then my question to Christine is, sorry,
Mhm.
is, you've had this, site one since 2017. Would you say that ComEd is one of the biggest violators that's reported as obstructors of bike lanes?
They quickly became a repeat bike lane offender. And in 2018, we actually tweeted at them, letting them know that they had been, reported to our database. So we started the database in late 2017, and by, 2018, they were already a repeat offender. We had already highlighted to the city of Chicago that these utility vehicles are causing issues within the community, causing safety hazards. And in 2019, April of 2019, we tweeted again at them specific to a site after their drivers were actually combative to cyclists. And they pretty much said, I don't know, go talk to my boss. I'm allowed to be here. When they're not. And they were actually provided a screenshot of all submissions to our database at that time. And then since that time, it's more than doubled.
Christina, could you just explain for people who aren't cyclists, like explain a greenway and how many greenways are in the city? And what, did you say this street was considered a greenway or what, or it was not?
Was.
It is.
Okay,
Leland,
Is.
yeah, if you could just kind of explain that and then also go into, in addition to cars and trucks looking out for cyclists, what infrastructure do you want to see put in place in the city to make things safer?
so the biking community would like a separated biking network that allows cyclists to be separated from traffic like this. And this is a greenway, and there are in 2021, the last calculations provided were 14.3 miles of greenways existed in the city of Chicago. That's about 0.31%. And protected bike lanes, there were 35.2 miles, and that's less than 1% of protected bike lanes. And again, we're saying that a protected bike lane by the city's definition, these are the city's definitions, really just means that there's a physical separation with some sort of physical item. Typically, that physical barrier is not a physical barrier, it's a flex post. And as anyone who saw the crash video on Balboa and Lakeshore Drive recently, where somebody crashed through the light posts in Gerardo's ghost bike, those flex posts are right back where they used to. But many of the bike lanes around the city of Chicago that even have flex posts, they've been destroyed, removed. People just drive over them because they know that there's no damage that'll be caused to a vehicle. And again, I provided the two definitions earlier about what a greenway is. I can read it again if you'd like, but
Just quickly, were the Shambrooks involved in their group, or did you know them through the cycling community at all?
we don't provide any information on who submits to our database.
Okay, did you know them through the cycling community personally at all?
We don't provide any information about any affiliation with our database.
Okay, you guys like hold public rallies and stuff like that. Are they people that you can come in contact with, or?
I mean, we go to a lot of events around the city of Chicago, and oftentimes there's upwards of 1,000 or more people.
Christina, you mentioned there that the cycling community wants to have those protected bike lanes. Isn't that what the city promised or pledged to have in place by the end of this year? They wanted to have those concrete barriers.
Even more,
Go ahead, but, and yes, certainly for a certain number of miles of the bike lanes, they did, but go ahead, Christina.
Even more ambitious is, there's a thing called Vision Zero. It's an international goal to have 0 deaths in a city, involving road fatalities, and the goal is to actually reach Vision Zero by this year or 2022.
Rich, I know that you've been in communication with the family, they're not here today, you left a statement. But as parents who lost their 3-year-old, how are they doing today?
Well, thank you for asking, and unfortunately, and the reason they aren't here is simply good. They are truly still grieving and emotionally distraught, and they just are not yet able to talk about this in any type of public setting. So,
What is the total amount that you're seeking in damages?
you know, that's certainly undetermined, and in these type of lawsuits, there's no specific amount that's requested in these type of
We
claims.
just see like 50,000 here and then 50,000 there.
That honestly is simply a jurisdictional amount set by the court in order for the lawsuit to be in a particular division, the division of or the law division of the Circuit Court of Cook County. That's all that means. That has pretty much nothing to do with ultimately ultimate request. Yes, judgment or
So is
ultimate
it safe to
request.
say an unspecified amount in damages or just that there's a lawsuit that's been filed?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I missed the last
Is
part.
it safe to say that an unspecified amount in damages that the lawsuit is seeking or just that a
Yeah,
lawsuit?
a lawsuit's been filed, and yes, you know, no specific amount of damages is currently requested.
Can I just ask one more question about the citation that was issued? How much is that citation?
Minimal.
Not much.
Yeah.
$100?
I think you're in the right
Region.
right region, exactly.
So it's a very minimal amount for blocking something like.
Correct, and especially for a major corporation, it gives them no incentive not to exploit the open space of a bike lane.
Wait, is it, I know we asked about the specific mechanics and some of this state law you've heard. Is it fair to say that the mother and the child were knocked off the bike by the tractor trailer?
The mother and Kate and Lily were both knocked to the ground.
Knocked to
Yes.
the ground by the tractor. When they were forced to go into oncoming traffic, they made contact with the tractor trailer.
They made contact with both the Commonwealth Edison truck and the semi-tractor trailer
Okay.
truck. I
Thank you
think
very
that's
much.
fair to say, yes.
We have a question from, this is a hybrid press conference, and it's also being aired on Zoom right now live. And Steve Miller from WBBM Radio has a couple of questions, if you're able to answer them. And that is, was this a regular route for the family, if you know? Do you know where they were going? And perhaps for Christina, could they have ridden on the sidewalk because they had a 3-year-old on board?
No, they could not have ridden on the sidewalk. This was a regular route that they were very accustomed to driving, and they were taking Lily to a day camp just down the street. Probably less than a couple minute ride from where the incident took place. Very familiar with the area.
Thank you. Okay, well, if there aren't any other questions,
I have one more question.
Oh, I'm
If they
sorry.
had ridden on the sidewalk, is there a citation that they would have issued, and how much would that citation have been?
I think this citation would be a pittance, it would be a very small citation if it was written. And it could be written by an officer of the law if they chose to do so.
I'm just trying to gauge how much it would have been versus what Conrad's was issued.
I can't tell you with any honesty what the specific number would be.
okay. Well, unless there's any other questions, thank you very much. And if Christina and everybody, Rich, Brad, we'll exit out this way.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.